on the proposal of the charter.
Excuse me, can't hear you. Too many people are talking.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, the Board of Selectmen will conduct a public hearing to receive public input on proposed revisions of the charter of the town of Andover set forth in the draft report of the Charter Revision Commission. We're now going to receive public input. Who wants to go first? Don Denver. I'll go first.
So I do not support or agree on this new charter revision. I will oppose it as best I'm able. In particular, section 105H, the minor ordinance, section 402A, the general powers of the Board of Selectmen, and section 301A, which is again with the ordinance, and in section 702, which is the town clerk. I'll go down my list. Section 105 is the minor ordinance. The elimination of this section removes, obviously, the public hearing and gives the power to enact all ordinances to the Board of Selectmen. I view this as an assault on our democracy by taking away the public views and taking away our decision-making, giving it to 5 people. This section should be restored to its original content, government by the people, for the people. 2, section 402 labeled general powers and duties. The word powers should be removed. We are in power. We're the taxpayer, we're the citizens, we're the voters. We should have the power. Section A and B should be restored to their original text. The power needs to remain with the people, the taxpayers and citizens of Andover, not the 5 selectmen. I've attended almost every town budget meeting since I moved here 30 years ago, in most public hearings, and I support the current process. It does not need to be fixed. Attendance can vary depending on the issues, but those who make the effort to come to the meetings know that they have an opportunity to speak on a particular ordinance or a particular town budget line item. Take a breath. Town clerk. This has always been an elected position, and I feel strongly it should remain that way. The town has been blessed with Marge and Carol, but a 4-year appointed position by the current 5 selectmen is unwarranted and unnecessary. And I would truly like to know why the Charter Revision Committee or you people think that needs to be changed. I believe that the tax collector and the assessor are appointed as well, but I don't see that they have to be reappointed every 4 years. Is that correct, First Selectman, or do you know that? Answer that?
I can tell you what the Charter Commission is trying to do, is trying to make the town clerk's position more like the town administrator's position. Because in the situation where you're voting for an individual such as Carol Lee, we know what we're getting.
Sure.
But the issue is when Carol leaves us. What are we doing?
Well, I'm confident that when Carol reaches the mandatory retirement age of 80,
Minimum.
qualified people will step forward. The charter revision needs to be revisited. This stands as a power grab in how our town government has operated for decades. We should have a voice and a vote on all town ordinances, and they should be presented at a public hearing. The Board of Selectmen does not need any more power than it already has. Our town clerk position should remain an elected position. Thank you.
All right, so most of you who know us know that it is very, very rare that Don Denley and I agree on anything.
Pigs are flying.
Yeah, pigs are flying, exactly. I have pretty much the same complaints, same objections to,
Scott, can you state your name?
oh, I'm sorry, Scott Soya, Boston Hill Road. So I have pretty much the same objections. I think it's a power grab. I think that we need to keep the democracy in town, the small town meeting style democracy. If we lose it, we're never going back. I think it's not been perfect. It's messy, it's ugly, but it's important. And then I feel the same about Carol's position. I also, at the last hearing, brought up a bunch of technical things about the charter, and a couple of them got changed, but several of them are still there. So this is, I think, a mess of a charter. There's typos, there's, they got this thing, you mentioned 105H. Well, this 105 is the section on definitions, and they've got something there that's totally not a definition. I think it's a hurried process. I think that was part of the problem. I've got a bunch of others, and I will give you guys copies of my notes again. What else? In one section, we have, it says something like, the Board of Selectmen shall have legislative authority for all matters not specifically enumerated hereinafter in section 304. Including but not limited to all those powers, whatever. So basically we're saying, we're referring to this other section, and we're saying we have those, but the section no longer applies, but we're gonna keep the section there. So they fixed it this time by taking out that section altogether. So now we have language that says that we're referring to this section that doesn't even exist. I think it's a sign of a hurried process. I wonder why it was done during summertime, if they thought there was less chance of people showing up and responding, or if it was just as they said. This needs to be done so we can get it on a presidential ballot, which is a legitimate thing, but I think we should have started much earlier if that was a concern. And a couple other, there's several other minor things. They fixed the other one that really worried me, where they tried to assert authority over the local school board's grants. That's been removed, and I'm glad to see that. But an awful lot of stuff hasn't been removed, and an awful lot of stuff is just power grabbing doesn't say enough. There's my notes. I think that we should, as the board should table this, or only do the least controversial things, changing the dates of the vote, things like that. Bring that to referendum, that's fine. And then try this again with more time and with the committee not so hurry. Okay, thank you.
Anyone else?
Jerry, I'm there's peace logs,
These two guys are a hard act to follow. I'm Jerry Fermay. I live at 8 Woodford Way. I'm here for a reason, this evening. I want to share my thoughts with you about the Charter Revision Commission's recommendation for changes in our town charter. But also, I'm learning things from listening to other people here. Anytime I go to a town meeting that involves spending of money, approving this, a $250,000 lawnmower, whatever, I've learned by listening to other people. I learned by the questions you ask and the answers you get. So that's why I'm here, and I wrote this out for myself. I'm ad-libbing it. Sometimes change is necessary. I think you're being proactive to want to come up with a plan of what happens when Carol leaves. She's not an easy person to replace. She loves this town. She gives her heart and soul into it. And it's good that she's going to get ready for when she wants to retire. You're not going to deny her that. So, I don't have the answer. What I would start with is talking to Carol Lee and saying, Carol, how would you go about doing this? And interview other towns, go out and ask other towns, and see how it's worked out. So sometimes change is necessary, but many times it's not. Our budget procedures I think work well. You've got a framework in place. Why change it because it needs to be changed? You've probably heard it many times, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Changes come with their own sets of pros and cons. In order to determine the impact of the changes, time to analyze them is necessary. As a resident, I feel as though the town flew through this Charter Revision Commission and they were rushed. Rushed to get something to produce quickly so that it could meet the November election day. People need time to analyze things and come up with, how do I feel about this? We have to process those changes, and we have to think about the implications of them. And that's why I like being in here with you tonight, because I'm learning a lot of things from other people. In Andover, the town meeting is our legislative body. Our residents attend town meetings and vote. The votes count. It doesn't matter whether I say yes and everybody says no, or somebody says no and everybody says yes. That doesn't matter. What matters is I'm getting a chance to explore and put myself in other people's places, in other people's shoes. I believe that any time you call for a town meeting to make a decision or put an item out to referendum, town residents are much closer to being in control of what they want for their town. People have had the chance to share their thoughts and ideas. I'd rather have a vote of 50 to 75 residents taken at a town meeting, as opposed to, no offense to you, or any of your board, as opposed to having the voice of just 5 select persons. As the residents think about the revisions suggested by the Charter Review Commission, they should ask themselves this question: how does this recommended change impact my ability to have a say in my local government? Is this change needed? What are the advantages of this change? And what are the disadvantages? That being said, we'd like to thank all the individuals who worked tirelessly on the Charter Revision Commission. You volunteered your time for many hours to serve the Andover community in this way. For that, I'm truly thankful.
Hi, I'm Bob Hamburger, live on Shoddy Mill Road. I volunteered and served on the Charter Review Commission, and in fact, I was flattered that they chose me to chair the commission. So I wanted to just provide a little bit of insight. I have nothing prepared. I didn't really expect to speak tonight, but I feel compelled to say a few things just to give a little bit of insight onto how we put all of this together. As chair, I tried as much as possible to be as nonpartisan as possible. I didn't want to steer the outcome. I just wanted to try to shepherd the process and let the process work as it's designed. We had 7 members. My vote was just one of them. And as I said, I tried to stay as center of the road and neutral as possible. I agree that when things don't need to be changed, they shouldn't be changed. As far as the process being rushed, you should know that the initial list of items that we had was almost twice as long as the list that we actually decided to deliberate upon. Some things we decided were too complex, were not important enough, and that we didn't have time to be able to give them any type of appropriate consideration. And so the answer to those was, we'll talk about those in the next cycle. Of the things that we did settle on, the one thing that I want to give a little bit more insight into is Carol and the town clerk. As Jeff mentioned, we know that she is a very strong candidate, that she has served the town tirelessly. Eventually, she's going to retire. One of the big advantages of having an appointed position like Eric's is that we aren't restricted to someone who lives here in town. And one of the things that we've seen time again with the various boards and commissions that we have in town is that we have trouble finding people who are qualified and willing and able. And that one change of making it appointed versus elected allows us to expand where we can look. And I think that's an important distinction. There's a lot of other things I could talk about if I was prepared, but I just wanted to add those things to the conversation. Thanks.
So Bob, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Now, the Charter Revision Committee, is it accurate to say that one of the things on their agenda initially was to eliminate the town meeting?
No,
No, that's
that,
Conspiracy theory.
yes, no, that subject, as you have just framed it, never came up.
never came up.
Never came up to eliminate the town meeting. No, absolutely not.
Okay, all right.
Okay, now, as you pointed out, there are certain parts of the process where it would be, where we're proposing that it not be included as it is included now. But the elimination of the town meeting in its entirety, no, absolutely, was never discussed in any context.
So you're just gonna you talk about maybe trimming it back some?
Yes, for the sake of efficiency in a lot of cases. That's how it was framed.
Saving money then? Efficiency, saving money, 2 terms I hate.
Yeah, I think that's probably a fair way to frame it, yeah.
Well, I'm believing it.
That's okay.
It's not, we'll still fix it. Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions while I'm up here?
Hi, Liz Logesh, Lake Road.
Yes.
About your question about the town meeting, I think it's not the town meeting that is being eliminated, it's the vote at the town meeting, is that correct? Like, for the town, people that show up at that town meeting to vote in support of the budget, is that correct?
The town meeting will continue in the exact same way it can. You can reduce the budget. You get to ask any questions. You get to vote on budget reductions. We're not voting to move the budget forward or against. It's not an up or down. What it is you make decisions to reduce the budget, and then that budget goes directly to referendum. So right now, the way that the town meeting works is 40 or 50 people that show up here come to a town meeting, and we all raise our hand and we talk about how our budget's too high, and then we have the potential to sit there and make a motion to lower a budget item. Those are either accepted or rejected, and at the end of the meeting, we vote the budget up or down, yes or no. And then at a yes or no vote, it goes to referendum. The only thing that we're attempting to do, which goes into all of the other issues that we want to address, is consolidating the budget referendum date with the RAM date, so we go to a one-time referendum to vote both on RAM and the town budget at the same time. The first time, it can fail. The RAM budget can fail or the town budget can fail. And then we have to go through the process again. But the only thing that we sat there and did from a financial standpoint, other than we did make adjustments to raise some of the thresholds that are required. Like right now, we have a $2,500 threshold on a town grant that Eric can't, in the current charter, we're not even supposed to apply for a grant unless we go to a town meeting and get it voted. It's incredibly inefficient. So what we did is there's some percentages up and down, some dollars on, but everything goes to a referendum.
Thank you.
Scott?
With the exception of ordinances. That's a change. I mean, I know there's a petition process, but there was
Petition process, which you can force anything to a referendum. The Board of Selectmen is not an omnipotent organization that's gonna make these ordinances where you feel that if you disagree with an ordinance, it's easier to change and to get the ordinance on a referendum ballot than it is to get everybody organized to come to a meeting and sit here. It's 50 signatures. It's not a lot. You know, so if we read it, it's an efficiency issue. It has nothing to do with power or attempting to usurp the authority of the voter. The voter will still vote on it if they choose to.
Thank you.
I will just redirect that. Okay, if this charter revision passes a referendum, okay, we will not be able to have significant input at a public hearing on any ordinance, okay? So our first selectman can say, yeah, we'll collect 50 signatures. I would rather help fund the public hearing where we seen many ordinances at public hearings, most of them just breeze through. But we should be able to sit here, have them present it, and then vote on it. Do we all want to go out and collect 50 signatures, so we can have a process that we've always had here for the last 30 or 40 years that I've been here? I know I don't. So the ordinance, okay, they want, these board of selectmen want to be able to take over and enact ordinances, and then if you disagree, you've got to fight them with a petition, and 50 signatures in a process. It's not just easy. It's not easy to do.
And then a quorum.
Well, one second. Town Attorney Dennis O'Brien.
Yes, there has to be a public hearing for any ordinance the Board of Selectmen brings up. The difference is it's not a town meeting, but they would hold a public hearing. So you have a public hearing, you have an opportunity to talk to them. You know, and if you don't trust them, fine, you know, do the town meeting. But frankly, you know, how many voters do you have in town? 2,000? How many people show up at a town meeting?
It varies.
50?
It varies. It depends on the,
Well, you had a good turnout tonight, it's a pretty good turnout, but still you're allowing 50 people to make a decision.
Well, it's supposed to be allowed 5 people to make a decision.
But they were elected by the rest of the town, by the whole electorate. It's a difference between, it's a difference between representative government and town meeting.
This is a public hearing. This is a public hearing to express.
I won't go.
The issue is that any ordinance that gets put up front, that the Board of Selectmen, any Board of Selectmen, puts up front, has to have a public hearing. It has to go through the residents, then it sits there and it goes through a different process than it currently does. That is what's being recommended. Anyone else, anyone different wants to speak?
Not different, just adding.
No, I remember it's different as an individual. You are a different person.
Anyone other than Tom.
Anyone other than Tom.
Don can come back at the end. So, summarize.
Okay, I always preface my statements with I'm the new kid on the block. I've only lived here 3 years. My concern was like Scott said about 105. Chair Body Road.
Your name?
Susan Camerota, I apologize. Susan Camerota, senior driver, veterans representative. I don't know what else I do around here. Chair Body Road, 53 Chair Body Road. Anyway, I agree with Scott about Section 105 definitions. That totally eliminated a definition for that phrase, minor ordinance. There was no such definition left after you crossed everything off. And back to the election of the town clerk. Again, I've been here 3 years. This is a different board than it was here 3 years ago, so elections work. So Carol, I don't think, was forced to put herself forward for election. I don't think anybody was forced to not oppose her every election. Again, haven't been here for very long. So she could have been voted out of that spot 20 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. So what difference does it make if Carol leaves or Carol doesn't leave? Somebody in this town should be able to take over that position. Or we could just say we could appoint the board. We maybe have better, smarter people outside of the town of Andover to be on the board, if that's what you're saying. That we need a better, smarter person that lives in the town of Andover to be the town clerk. It's not very eloquent, but that's my statement.
Thank you.
And I have a question, I'll just drop in really quickly. What actually is the difference between public hearing and town meeting? Can you vote it both, or it's the way it's come across as far as?
You got it, Catherine. Town meeting, you vote.
But in
Public hearing,
you do not.
you don't.
Correct.
They vote.
Okay, that was an important
Yeah.
consideration. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry, Catherine McGaldy Lewis, Oak Farms Road, Andover, Connecticut. All right, I have a couple of things. As far as the minor ordinance, section 105, again, I agree. I can't believe that I'm going to agree with John Denley. I do. I'm probably going to have to faint after this.
Speak up, yes.
Speak up. Okay. See, that means you didn't hear that one, and that's fine. We never had, and we still do not have, an actual definition for what a minor ordinance is. And that's always bothered me. So I really wish that we could come up with a minor ordinance definition. And as far as changing it so that the board is allowed to amend, repeal, delete, whatever they want to do without actually having a town meeting does bother me. And it's not at all that I don't trust this board. I like everybody on this board, I trust everyone on this board. I just think that I don't want to take the authority of a town meeting away from its people, of the town. That's what it's there for. That is what we've always done in New England, and that's the way I'd like to keep it. And also, I think you should just, for a few things, like, I have an example that if you wanted to, if this board wanted to, I would think, change the taxes to be collected annually, or biannually, or whatever, you would be able to do that. It's an ordinance, you'd be able to do that, and we would not be able to vote on it. Is that correct?
That's not correct, because if we did that, you would get 50 signatures and you'd go to referendum and you'd
If
vote
you
it
have-
no.
If we are able to go and get
Come on,
50
who can't get 50 signatures? You know you can get 50 signatures.
Some people don't even want to knock door to door.
Why would you want to make us go through that?
Why do I want, make you want to come here for a town meeting? We haven't done a
'Cause we
tremendous
love to see
number. There have been a lot of things that the boards in the last 4 years have wanted to do, and we've held off because we have not wanted to drag everyone to a public meeting. That's why when we have had public meetings, we've had 6 or 7 things on the agenda to go through.
I
Now,
don't
and
disagree
listen,
with that, but I also, but I don't believe that it's right to ask the, change the petition process. Do something like that. Because I don't disagree that we shouldn't be hamstrung by the fact that you need a room full of people. I agree with that. And I agree that we should progress and do different things, I really do. But I don't believe that the process should be our only choices now to walk door to door and get 50 signatures.
okay.
Okay? The town clerk, I think the major difference between appointed and elected, and everybody should know this, is that as an appointed, no, you do not have to be a town resident, which is not necessarily a bad thing. Elected, you must be. I don't see the issue either way. I'm not opposed, or, I just feel that either way, if we were going to do it correctly, then Carol would be the person that would have to at least make sure that next person is qualified and can do their job, and then you have thanks. You have a plan in place and what her duties are, so that the next person can step in and go forward. Whether you're appointed or elected, you should be able to do that. The next thing, and I don't have a lot. Again, like with section 301 in general, it's basically saying that you're taking away the authority from the Andover residents to vote in town meeting and giving it to the Board of Selectmen. And again, right now, I think it is ridiculous that it's on the charter that you can only spend $2,500 or whatever. That's, in this day and age, that's crazy. I don't know if I think it's okay to up it to $50,000 without a town meeting, but I do agree that $2,500 is bizarre. And let's see if I have anything else I want to say. I think I might be, believe it or not. The only other thing was that on section B of finance and taxation, it says that the boards now, the agencies and boards, whatever, are going to be given their budgets to the town manager rather than the Board of Finance. And I didn't understand why you would want to do that, so I would like to have that explained, since I believe that's part of the Board of Finance's function and not town manager's function. And what does that do? How does that change the Board of Finance? And doesn't that slow the process at all? And I think that's it. I think that's it. Thank you.
Question on the matter of the town clerk. When someone's elected to the office of town clerk, are there standards or tests, certifications, qualifications before they can run? Like, how do you verify the person's, qualified for the position before they run?
So I can answer that. You don't have to be qualified to run. Any elector in the town of Andover can run for town clerk. There is a multi-year process to become a qualified town clerk, but you can hold the position without being a qualified town clerk. Ideally, if that's the case, the assistant clerk would be the qualified town clerk. A town can work with either a fully trained and certified assistant or a fully trained and certified town clerk. It's been a lot of years since we've had an assistant town clerk that was fully certified, certainly not in my tenure. So, and the current assistant town clerk is not certified, nor is she an Andover resident. So even though she's probably the most qualified person to take Carol's job, she would be unable under our current system because she is not currently residing in Andover. Now, she could choose to move to Andover, but I don't think she intends to do that. So the advantage, there's advantages and disadvantages to both being elected and appointed. The advantage to being appointed is that you have a much wider pool to choose from. Instead of picking one person out of roughly 2,500 adults, you know, you have an entire state and you can poach a qualified assistant town clerk that's been certified from another town, which is what most larger municipalities do. It hasn't happened in a long time because we've been very fortunate that Carol has done this job for, 26 or 27 years. And it certainly isn't. What?
Do you know what the surrounding towns, like Hebron, Coventry, Columbia?
I know statewide it's roughly 50-50 elected versus appointed. So it's just a different, we have struggled to fill the position of assistant town clerk pretty consistently, and it's been kind of a revolving door. Hopefully we're stable at that position right now, but so I'm not saying one is necessarily better than the other, but I think for a small town to be sure you're gonna find somebody that's a competent town clerk, it's not a guarantee, that's for sure.
But if a town clerk is appointed, that town clerk is not an autonomous person anymore, right? That town clerk answers directly to the town manager?
Well, I'm a town administrator, not a town manager.
Okay, sorry, town manager.
Yes, that person would, but remember that the thing that regulates the action of the town clerk is state statute far more than the individual town. I mean, Carroll's is beholden to state law far more than town ordinances or anything else.
But that's state law, not town politics.
That is
Sorry,
correct.
yeah,
Yeah.
just to look at it from that side of things, okay.
I'd rather go to Bob.
Let someone speak who hasn't.
No, he spoke.
Okay. Just something that hasn't been enumerated before this group, and I'm not sure if it's clear or not, with regard to the charter revisions, we're not intending this to be an all or nothing kind of thing. We intend there to be 6 or 7 different line items on the ballot in November, each of which encompasses the different concepts that we're bringing here. There are several different concepts that have been introduced, such as the budgetary thresholds, or the town clerk, or the minor ordinances, and all of these things are going to be put together as separate line items. So we don't have to vote yes or no on the entire thing. We're going to be able to vote these individual items up or down as you see fit. That's the first thing I wanted to mention. And my apologies for coming here and speaking extemporaneously, but this is just how it works. With regard to Carol and the town clerk's position, Carol is on the Charter Review Commission. And this is a matter of public record. If you watch the videos or look at the transcripts, you can see what I'm about to say here, which is that at the beginning of the process, she opposed the change to an appointed position. And as discussion and debate and various things were introduced, she actually changed her mind. And she endorses the idea of an appointed position right now, just for the record.
Well, she voted yes for it. We won't say that she is in favor. She voted yes on the Charter Revision Commission to move that forward.
Okay.
How she votes is her own issue. Scott?
First of all, my talk with Carol is that she was remaining studiously uncommitted about this. She told me that. She told me she was not going to make any points. I thought she was going to vote on that measure either, but I'm not sure if that happened or not. But the question I really wanted to ask, and it's probably for Bob, the process then. Do you guys realize that This document that you're looking at is not on the town website. I checked it at noon today. I called the town clerk, I got the assistant clerk, and she emailed it to me. But
Which document are you talking about?
the changes from July 17th. The latest version you guys are working with. The July 8th one is on the website.
That is something that we have to discuss with the town clerk.
Okay.
Because the town clerk, who also in Bob's absence was the chairperson of the Charter Review Commission, had all the documents. All those documents were supposed to be submitted to the assistant to the administrator, and they should have been up online. If they're not, I apologize, but it's in her office anyway.
But it makes them hard.
It does. You're good.
I just have a quick question, because I don't know if this would make it a win-win or not. Can the petition process be changed?
Can the petition
The
process?
petition
be
process.
changed? It can be if we voted back to the Charter Revision Commission.
Because I just thought at least then it would take care of people's anxiety about having to go get 50
50
signatures,
signatures.
which doesn't seem like a lot to you, but when's the last time you went out and did door-to-door knock?
I know the DTC, if they would like to get 50 signatures and addresses, all that's required, not yes or no, can get 50 signatures.
But my
PTA
question is,
the
can it
PTA
be-
could get 50 signatures.
I can't
The
even-
RTC could get 50 signatures.
So you
It's not
say-
a monstrous
So
threshold.
you say. But my question is, I'm trying to look at both sides here, and you're not helping. I'm trying to ask if the petition process is something that can be looked at and changed. And that way you get to.
In our board meeting, if we choose to push anything back to the Charter Revision Commission, yes, it can be potentially amended.
I have a question about that as well, because I was reading all this stuff to be prepared for this meeting. My understanding, and maybe I missed it in one of the meetings, was that after the ordinance is agreed upon, the townspeople get a letter, and then they have 20 days, right, which I didn't actually get for this meeting today, but, and then they can send it back saying, yeah, I don't like that, or whatever. So that in itself is not the petition process?
That is the petition.
That is, so if 700 people send those cards back and say no, then
No,
that's the petition
the
process?
way it works is there'll be a petition form in the town clerk's office or any organization you go and get. This gets to the town clerk's office, this letter.
Okay.
Right? It takes 7 days. The Board of Selectmen has a meeting, they vote on it, this mailer goes out from the town. It then gets mailed to every resident within the community. The town clerk's office gets one of these. The town clerk stamps their mailing. You have 20 days from the date that the mailing was received by the town clerk to get 50 signatures.
Oh.
50
Yeah.
signatures for 20 days, once it gets there, and then it goes immediately to referendum. It does not go into, it does not become implemented, nothing happens.
Right.
It then goes to referendum.
Okay, that's the part I didn't understand. So I could see.
Anything on that, Don?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I've said it already, I disagree.
Okay, thanks.
I think it's a serious power. So, but it's just, I want to just address to Bob Hamburger about the town clerk.
Don, you're good, thank you.
The, Carol Lee did not commit to saying she was for the appointed position. She told me she was uncommitted, okay? So, she did not.
And I appreciate Jeff's clarification, and the way that he stated it was clear. She voted to advance the item further.
Where's the microphone? We got $20,000 to do a study, but we can't get another a PA in this place, huh? It requires $10,000 to use PAs and have a microphone.
Dawn.
I'm Catherine Hutchinson. I live on Bunker Hill Road. And I have allergies, so excuse me if I have to keep clearing my throat. I was going to address this last, but because it was the last topic before we got up here, I'll address it, and maybe I can refer to it at the end. As was just indicated, that if an ordinance is passed, then the town can repeal it by filing the appropriate petition to repeal. And it does require 50 signatures at this point. And if that's the case, then the referendum is held. But I want to read you from the ordinance itself. The ordinance shall stand approved by the referendum unless a majority of the electors voting shall have voted in favor of repealing such ordinance. Provided, however, that at least 10% of the registered voters of the town shall have voted on the matter. Any ordinance not so repealed shall take effect the next day. Now, I read that to mean, excuse me, is what, roughly a little over 2,000. So even though the 50 signatures are obtained, approved by verified by the town clerk, goes to the Board of Selectmen, and they set the referendum. An affirmative vote to repeal at that town meeting, at that referendum, isn't enough unless more than the 10% of the registered voters at that point have participated. So let's just take, for example, it's 220 is 10%. And there are 219 of us voting there, and we all vote to repeal. That ordinance would not be repealed.
Can I say one thing for you, Ms. Hutchinson? Any referendum has to occur in the May or November election timeframe. No special referendum dates. No special dates.
So it's not immediately, which is what you said.
It's not immediate.
It's at the next election or the next referendum, yeah. But when it goes to the referendum,
Right, and what Jeff was saying, there's no election, there's a budget referendum in May. There could be an ordinance that's attempted to be passed by the Board of Selectmen that the residents, the town residents want to repeal. 50 signatures goes to referendum. It would be on the budget vote or on the state election in November. No other time.
I understand.
Yeah.
I use the term vote on that referendum as using the language that the ordinance uses.
Yeah,
It's not a referendum.
Yeah, and I would sit there and go, let's say it's 200. I don't think we've had less than 200 voters at one of those elections ever.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Budget?
Yes, we have.
Oh, yes.
Budget?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We have board budget?
Ran budget, we hardly even.
Now you gotta show up. Now we gotta show up.
My experience is when people are interested, they show up, right?
Right.
All right, so obviously I'm up there primarily to speak about the portion of the proposed charter revision dealing with the town meeting that is the ordinance, adoption of the ordinances. Now, we all learned, I'm sure, in our first civics class, somewhere along the line, that there are 3 branches of government in the United States: the judicial, the elective, and the legislative branch. Here in Andover, as you all know, the town meeting is our legislative branch. That's you and I. That's you and I and every elector in this town. We're the legislative branch in this town. And we come to a town meeting, and where we present, we ask questions, we listen to what other people have to say, and we have our say. And then we vote. And sometimes, hopefully, most of the time, it goes the way we vote. But if it doesn't, and it doesn't go the way we vote, it's still the process. It's still the process by which we all get a chance to participate, even though we always don't win, so to speak. I've lived in town a long time. I think we do a pretty good job. I think we do a pretty good job here in Andover. Now, there are times when maybe 25 people show up. But 25 people are 25 people out of, let's say, the 22,000 or so electors that are privileged to be able to come to that meeting. But we had the opportunity. Maybe we chose not to because it wasn't something that interested and we didn't care one way or the other. But it's also been my experience to see so many people wanting to do a town meeting that you have to transfer the town meeting to a larger facility. We all see that. So why should we give up? Why do we want to give up our right to have a say on the laws that are governing our town? As I said a minute ago, as we started to discuss before, again, to repeat, the revision that's proposed would take that right away from us. The proposed provision in the ordinance, the revision, shall we, as we started out, or I started out with, because someone finished up with it, would call first, we said a minute ago, the refiling of the, excuse me, of the petition for the referendum.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Sorry.
And, yeah, that's it. And the Board of Selectmen, as I said, are required to hold a special referendum. And I'm repeating myself because this is what I was going to finish up with, but I started with it. That means, as I said before, that 1 short of 10% of the electors, let's see, 220, 219 of us come and vote. But we haven't met that 10%, that provision is going to stand and become the law here the next day. Why do we want to give up the right? It's very, very important right.
Jeff Bauer.
I've heard a lot of good things tonight, and I agree. I do not want to give up my power and my choice of voting and expressing my opinion. I don't want someone making it for me. I don't want things decided for me. I'm very in favor of town meetings and referendums. Some of you, I think, know that I went door to door and got 130 signatures to have a study done about regionalization. Well, little did I know, it wasn't an official petition, and so it was denied and never went anywhere, and I wasted my time. I never want to have to go through that again. And I think it's unfair to say, oh, 50 signatures. No, I'm very much opposed to that, and I'm not sure how I feel about elected or appointed Carol Lee. I'd like to see appointed, I'd like to see promoted within locally. That can't happen, I guess, at this point. Or to have someone from town brought up through the ranks and qualified and tutored and assisted. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Ballpark, maybe this is an Eric question or the rest of the board. In the last 4 years, how many minor ordinances have we passed?
Well, what is the definition of a minor ordinance?
What's the definition? We don't have a definition.
There is a definition, but it's not very good. It's in the charter.
I didn't know.
It's right, it's in there. Take a look.
Everything that we voted, we've gone to town meeting.
About 4, maybe 5.
No.
Or some.
Hi, I'm Leanne Hutchinson, Bunker Hill Road. I'm not going to bring up anything new because everything that I wanted to state has been covered. I just want to say that I have followed the process. I've attended several of the Charter Review Zoom committee meetings. I've spoken during public speak, and I've read up on all the minutes of meetings I wasn't able to attend. And I want to express my agreement with some of the points that have been brought up tonight, including not taking any legislative power away from the town meeting. I think people who get themselves, quote unquote, to a town meeting deserve the attention that that brings. I've been to town meetings where things went my way and other times where I didn't agree with the final result, but at least it's the New England Democratic format that people have fought and died so that we can show up and express our opinion. I also don't agree with the process, what I consider a long process that's proposed for repealing an ordinance. I think it's cumbersome to wait until the next referendum. And I also just want to also express my opinion that having followed this process from the beginning, I'm not completely sure how it originated in the first place. I just don't think it's necessary the way it's proposed. So those, I just wanted to say for the record that those are the main points that have already been stated that I agree with. Thanks.
All right.
Second, Marcy.
So this document has an awful lot of changes proposed in it. And I just want to talk a little bit about, because what I don't want to see is everybody thrown out because everybody's pissed about a couple portions of this. So number one, the state several years ago pretty much required all the towns to go to elections in the fall, and for many years had spring elections. We no longer do. There's a very cumbersome process to get back to the possibility of May elections, which I don't think we as a town want to go through. So we ought to make the charter change to officially codify that elections will be in November, because our charter says one thing and state law says another thing. So we should change that section in the charter, which is section 203, general elections. You can make a decision whether or not the town clerk position is included in that. That's neither here nor there. So that makes sense. The second thing is section 210, which covers early voting. Again, that is state law. We are simply making the charter in that section match what state law is, and that state law now says early voting is a thing, so regardless of whether we have it in our charter or not, we're obligated to do it. So we might as well make our charter consistent. As far as the town budget meeting goes, I think the goal there really was to drive voter participation at the referenda. Because the reality is we have usually 2 budget votes a week apart, one for RAM, one for the town budget. We typically get, what, a little less than 5% of the electorate votes on the RAM budget. So 5% of the taxpayers vote on 40% of the town's spending. By combining those two together and having one vote, at least initially, that covers both budgets, I think the goal was to get more people out to vote, you know, so we get a higher turnout and it's more representative of what people actually want. So I think that, to me, is a worthwhile thing to consider. The second thing is, right now, there's no lower limit on leases, you know, at which it doesn't have to go to town meeting, okay? So that means the $200 a year lease for the thing in the town clerk's office that runs the postage through the meter, that technically has to go to town meeting. And there are lots and lots of things like that. Now, I mean, if you look at it objectively, there's 20 or 30 things that either us as a town or the Board of Education would have to go to town meeting for, because we have no lower threshold on that. So that's frankly dumb, because, you know, that's just too many things. I don't think most of you really care, you know, that we're spending a couple $100 a year to lease the postage machine. At least I would hope you don't. You would consider that a normal cost of business. So you set that threshold high enough so that when we go to buy something expensive or lease something expensive, like a plow truck or something of that nature, that you all get to say and weigh in on it, and you leave the little stuff to the Board of Finance and Board of Selectmen to approve. So, in my opinion, that makes sense to allow that that change in the charter to go through. So that is section 304E under leases. And the other one is grants. So how many of you here have had a hand in writing one of the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving grants? Any of you go to town meeting to accept that? You go to town meeting to accept that? Did you? No, we didn't, because practically there's too many little grants that run through this town. And that's all funding that we get from the state that we use to lower taxes and get things done in the town. So going to public meeting for a big grant, absolutely appropriate. If we're gonna spend, you know, a big chunk of your tax dollars, absolutely. That should go to town meeting, you should absolutely have a say in it. But the little stuff, I mean, you know, the Old Cemetery Association, pretty much every year they go for a grant for maintaining the headstones. Well, but the town also budgets money in that line item. So technically, every single year we should be going to town meeting for that. And there are many things in that category. So I would urge you to pass that just as a reasonable governance change.
What number is that?
That is 304G, which is participation in any federal, state, or private grant program. So that one I think is worth the town pursuing. Obviously, some of these other things are controversial. The other one is administrative positions. So currently, under section 702D and E, those are two positions that the town right now doesn't exactly line up with the charter. In the case of the Director of Health, it says we shall appoint the Director of Health as mandated by the state of Connecticut. Well, in that person is a part-time employee. Well, we're part of a regional health organization. We're part of Eastern Highlands Health District. I'm on the board of directors of that. I'm also on the executive board of that organization. So that's a shared service that we are part of, but they're not town employees. So our charter does not match what we actually do. So I would urge you to accept section 702 for administrative positions.
Excuse me, how would you go about that then? If we're a regional, we're part of the Eastern Health, how do you change that to the Board of Selectmen will appoint the Director of Health?
Because all the Board of Selectmen, it just ratifies the fact that we use Eastern Highlands Health District. The only thing we're not adding anything, we're basically striking the fact that it says the Director of Health is employed part-time in the town, because he is not a town employee, he's an employee of Eastern Highlands Health District.
But we don't appoint them either. I mean, should that, I guess my question is, should we be restating that entire, because we don't employ them. I don't think that we've ever actually
followed our charter. So we voted years ago to join Eastern Highlands Health District when they were expanding. And we've been a part of that organization ever since.
Right.
We pay into it, we're a part of the governing body of that, and we get a lot of really good service, both us and the school. So to me, that makes sense. The second thing is animal control officer. Currently, we use NECOG, which is the Northeast Council of Governments Animal Control Services, to cover the town, as opposed to having our own. And there's two parts to that. The first is the state changed the laws several years ago regarding animal control facilities and the cost to take what was our animal control facility and make it meet state law is really expensive. So we don't really have any intention of going back to having our own animal control officer and own animal control facility. You know, technically today, animal control facilities have to be air conditioned. They have an awful lot of standards that we frankly can't meet without building a standalone facility for that. So by changing that, the charter says that we're going to have our own officer. All this charter change does is allow us to use a shared service for that. So I think you should pass that. I think that's reasonable, and that matches what we actually do for governance. And then the changes to the way the budget runs, just what I want to say right now is our charter currently calls that out kind of two different ways. So obviously the Board of Finance has final authority for the budget that goes to the public. But what happens is, prior to the start of the budget process, each department head submits a budget. Each department head, each board and commission submits a budget to the town, to both myself and the finance director. They all get collated into a budget and then gets reviewed. That gets passed out to the Board of Selectmen and Board of Finance. So most of what's in here is what we're actually doing now, is actually the way the process works. For the most part, the Board of Finance is not doing what they used to do, which is they used to hear from each individual department themselves, and they collated the budget and came up with the final budget. So with the switch to a town administrator, part of that role has shifted to myself and who we have for a finance director. So that's, to me, that makes sense, but maybe it doesn't make sense to you. And that's pretty much all I have in terms of what I wanted to say. So what I would say is just please don't throw out the baby with the bathwater. There are sections here you may be incredibly opposed to, and that's fine, but there's a bunch of things that are just governance changes that make sense to be adopted. So that's it. Thanks.
Can I ask a question about the $50,000 lease option line item?
Sure.
How did that number, that seems like I mentioned, we don't have to nickel and dime every single lease, but $50,000 is kind of a high projection to me. Like, what would be an example of that? What page are you on? Oh, this is
That would be
304E.
a 5-year piece of equipment from Public Works, a small piece of equipment from Public Works that is being leased over a 5-year term would represent a $50,000 item that still has to go to budget. And you have to realize that $50,000 is if we call, we would have to call, and just like we did with the mower that just went up in front of town meeting, we would have to call a special town meeting to have a vote on a piece of equipment that would be $50,000. And right now, I think, Eric, what's it, $5,000 or $2,000?
There's actually no limit, right?
There's no limit. So anyways, so it's not something that's included in the normal budget because you would get to vote on that, at referendum, and be able to speak about it. It's if the Board of Selectmen called a special meeting on a lease that they wanted to enact that's outside of the budget for $50,000. It technically is not really going to occur very often, but it's just setting a different threshold. Marcy, you're up.
I just have a question, Marcy Minor, West Street. What is the process for when the town clerk wants to leave her position? Or, say we hire a new one and find that maybe the townspeople aren't happy with the new person. What would be the process of that person going?
Well, right now, we can't, because the town clerk is an elected official, and the town clerk is statutorily required, has rules, there are rules. The local government can't just go after the town clerk and ask the town clerk to leave. The town clerk could resign, and that's a whole other issue I don't ever want to deal with.
Well, that's why I'm
Please let
asking.
me go before that happens. Because I don't know what we would do if they resigned. We'd have to have a special election. We'd have a special election, and then anyone in town who the Democratic Town Committee and the Republican Town Committee approved would run off for the town clerk's position. That's what would happen.
And that could be challenging.
And Jeff, that's whether they're qualified or not.
That's
just a
whether they're
political
qualified or
arena.
not.
That's just a political arena, there's no qualifications for that.
I mean, listen, the town clerk's position, for everybody that's going, it is no different than what we did with the town administrator and replacing the first selectman's, administrative authority. Because you can never be guaranteed that the person sitting in the first selectman's chair has the capabilities to do that job effectively for the town's residents. That's why we did it. So you all voted for that. There's no difference in the town clerk's position than the town administrator's position. That's it.
Not necessarily.
I disagree with that.
You can sit there and say you want somebody to vote for it, but Catherine, think of the Democratic Town Committee. Who are you putting up for that job that's qualified to do that job effectively for the residents of the town area? Not the 50 people that are here at this meeting, but the other 2,500 residents that need the town clerk services. Who is the Democratic Town Committee putting up for that job? You got any ideas?
Here's my question though, to answer that is, you're talking political versus professional. So that's what I had asked, or what I had said before when someone was saying something, that currently, she is an elected position, but she has an autonomy there, because she doesn't answer directly to the town administrator or anyone else. If you now appoint her, if you would now hire someone, that person, of course, has no autonomy. That person is going to have to, politically speaking, I'm just not, professionally it's different. But the little town politics is little town politics, and that's not going to change. So that position is no longer autonomous. That position is now going to be involved in the political process of the town administrator.
Eric Anderson, one second, Eric Anderson's position is a political position, right? It's appointed by the board. Every 2 years, not every 4 years, every 2 years, we have to renew Eric's contract. This board could sit there and say they want Eric out.
Right.
Right? And we could vote him out and then have to hire and politically do it anew. Why? Who wants to go through that? Eric, don't ever leave. All right? You're doing a great job for this community. All right?
Don't forget, we're not talking about Carol, we're talking about the town clerk.
That's right.
And Carol's not gonna,
Right.
she's not gonna wanna be the town clerk forever. We're gonna have to have another new person. And I feel like we've gotten lucky having Carol, and we might not get lucky having someone in town that is like her.
Right, I can raise it.
Last person, by the way.
I was gonna say the same thing. I feel like, we had some positions in the town office that were very difficult to fill. We've hired people that didn't work out. If they were elected, we would have had a Jim Dandy of a time getting rid of them. When the person is appointed, there's qualifications and expectations that come along that they have to meet, that if they don't meet them, we can move on to the correct person in the job. And you gotta take Carol Lee out of it. You gotta look at the position and what's best to move the town forward and keep things going. The new town clerk, whoever he or she may be, has state regulations and laws that they will have to adhere to, as Eric had mentioned, but they should be an appointed position and not an elected political position based on qualifications.
Is there anyone who has not spoken that would like to speak one time? Eric? And Louise, is there anyone else that has not spoken that wants to go? Come on, Eric, you're up. You're up. Louise is going to go next. Anybody else? I want you on the record right now. Anybody? Anybody? All right, Louise, you get the last word, all right?
Eric Shevchenko, Bunker Hill Road.
A little louder.
Still Eric Shevchenko. And I still live on Bunker Hill Road. I served on the Ram Board of Ed. And one of our most difficult assignments was to hire a new superintendent for that school. That is a big, big position. It's huge for the future of that school. We had a board of 11 people, and we spent literally months working on this issue, getting it down from 11 terrific applicants to 6, and now how are we going to get it to 3? And now how are we going to get it to a point where we can have a vote on this, right? So the effort that we put into that to select the best possible candidate is a great multiple on what would happen if it was simply a vote. If a bunch of people just applied and there was a list to vote, how are people going to know who the most qualified person is, right? So, so with people on boards, our wonderful board here that works hard for us, we have a democratic vote. I agree with that, right? But when you're hiring a professional, and it seems to me that Carol Lee is a professional, that we need to have a group of people look deeply into the people who are applying for this job and use their collective judgment in selecting the best person. And so you say, well, why did I get that? Why did I deserve that responsibility? It's because you put me there. That's how it works. So, I'm just trying to speak in support of appointing a person here where you're able to look deeply into who has applied and have a good group of people make a selection on behalf of the townspeople who voted them into that position to do that. Thank you.
Louise Goodwin, Lakeside Drive, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn this meeting.
I'll second. All right. Any discussion on hold on. I want everybody to know we have another quick meeting after this.
Oh, yeah.
No, I understand.
Can you adjourn the public hearing?
We're adjourning the public hearing. Everybody voting? This is the town meeting. Vote for it. Okay. All right. You can all go. Congratulations.